It is me, Mike Vanderpool, here today on the Make It Happen podcast. I am the founder of Anthony Wayne Innovation and Design. We are telling the story of cool people doing cool things in Northwest Ohio and beyond. One of the coolest people I've met in my travels here on this earth is Matt Dery. Matt Dery does the Locked On Lions podcast along with a whole bunch of other stuff. Matt and I met through a phone call almost a decade ago when he was at 105.1. I'm not sure if we could talk about that, Deez, but welcome in. Glad to have you here.
It's always great to see you, Mike. You did go by some different names back in the day, but we'll just leave it there. You're a dedicated Lions fan, an unbelievable dad, and a husband, and it's always good to talk to you, especially in this space, because I know you were one of the first to come to me years ago about podcasting and doing your own thing. And now everybody's doing it now in 2025. It's legit, man. It seems like, yes, it's very popular, and it's a great way for people to get the word out about and really voice what some of their beliefs and just to entertain.
And everybody and their brother, it seems like, has a podcast today about the Lions, like up, down, left, and right. You can, from all of the reputable places that are out there, and then just somebody sitting in their basement, right? Like I even did that with the Heart of a Lions fan, right? Was talking to fans trying to get that off the ground. Tell me the story about Locked On Lions. I know you started after the radio gig, but let me know where you started and how you got to now with it.
Look, Mike, I'm very lucky. All right. You garner relationships over the years with people that in the business. I was doing Pistons pre and post game for 12 years on the radio. The Utah Jazz play-by-play guy, David Locke, and I just knew each other from both the WNBA and the NBA. And he called me in, I believe it was April or May of 2016, right after I got let go at Detroit Sports 105.1, which we knew was eventually going to go under, which it did. And David called me, and obviously the name Locke, L-O-C-K-E, called me. He said, look, I'm doing a podcast here as well as being the voice of the Utah Jazz called Locked On Jazz. I think I want to start a network called the Locked On Podcast Network, where we have all the NBA teams and all the NFL teams in each city. And what do you think? And I said, that's a great idea. And he said, you've been around the Pistons. Do you want to be my Locked On Pistons host and have to do the show daily? It would be 25 minutes a day. Do you have equipment? I said, I do. And I said, by the way, hold on a second. Who's doing your Lions show? He's like, I don't know. You tell me. You're in Detroit. Help me out. And I said, well, I want to do it. He's like, but don't you want to do Pistons? I said, I love the Pistons. I worked for the team, but I want to talk football. I mean, Lions is king, number one. So give me the Lions show. He goes, it's yours. And we ended up getting Matt Shook was the original Locked On Pistons host. He was working at the Detroit News. He'd worked with me at DFN years ago. And so that's how it kind of got started. So right there by June of 2016, David basically said, just give me 25 minutes a day, audio only, record it, put it into, at the time was Megaphone, which we use Simplecast now, but Megaphone is just another way of inputting the audio in there and editing and putting the intros and outros and name and headlines and descriptions. And, you got paid a little bit. It was a nice, side business. And it has grown to the point where the Locked On Podcast Network really is the preeminent sports podcast company in the country. We expanded from just NFL and NBA to NHL and MLB, college sports, fantasy sports. I mean, the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast is usually in the top 200 of Apple. And it's grown to the point of YouTube and videos and daily streaming shows. And it's crazy. And it's really been good. It's really been good. And it helps that the Lions are finally a force to be reckoned with. So my audience has grown, 4 or 5 times what it did when I started.
Yeah, like back in the day, it used to be like week 8. We used to start talking about the draft, right? And now,
yes, that's right.
And now the past couple of years, I have to give you some credit for this Lions resurgence. Everybody wants to give Jeff Daniels and Peyton Manning and then the bathtub full of whiskey. But most people don't know that you threatening to quit was actually the week before this whole thing took off, man.
I don't know about that, but yes, I did. I mean, look, part of it was a bit, of course. I wasn't going to quit, but I was angry. And you're right. It was the second year of the Dan Campbell regime, and I just didn't see any progress. And I'm like, what is going on? If they don't win this week, I think it was Green Bay at home. I said, I'm done. And they ended up winning, and they went on this run, and then they beat the Packers again, of course, in week 18. But nobody, Mike, and you know this, you're at all the games. Nobody envisioned it would be to the point where they are America's team. I mean, people are really rooting for the Lions. I talked to two buddies of mine last night who are Commanders fans and grew up Redskins fans, whatever. And they're like, "Oh my God, we got to play you guys. I'm rooting for you guys. This is hard." And I said, "Well, no, it's not. You're Washington fans." So even they're on the Lions bandwagon. They're likable. They're entertaining. It's a good group of guys. Dan Campbell is easily the most popular sports figure in town, and they're a wagon. They're 15-2, and there's photos today of Dan Skipper on the beach. A lot of guys took some time off to get away and rest while these other teams are beating the brains out of each other. So coming back to host hopefully 2 playoff games and have an NFC Championship game at Ford Field next week. Could you imagine?
Did they play at home in '91? Because that was the last championship game, right? When they did play the Redskins in '91.
Yes, it was in Washington, and they lost
Okay.
41-10. I
Oh,
mean,
it
they got
was
blitzed. Yeah.
I still feel that moment. It's amazing. I feel that's my first line memory was the first time they played Washington that season and got clubbed, and
Yeah.
then that playoff game where let's move on.
Now, how about this? The last time they played Washington in the playoffs, and I had forgotten about this, was I believe 2009 with Bobby Ross as the coach, and Gus Frerotte was the starting quarterback. And that was a game where Bobby came out with Corey Schlesinger, the fullback. Maybe it wasn't '09, it was 2000, but regardless, he had Schlesinger playing halfback. He went with like a big backfield. And this guy Travis Reese, the other fullback at the time, was in the game. And it's like, what is Ross doing? And they got their brains beat in. Farrat was hurt most of that game. They didn't really have a backup. Corey Sauter was the backup, and he didn't want to go to Corey Sauter. So Farrat's playing basically with one arm, and it was a disaster.
I mean, you and I can talk Lions forever. We
I
know
know.
this. It's really interesting though, because that point where you as a bit talked about quitting, like it's hard, isn't it? I mean, it had to have been hard dealing and talking about this team and the situation that it was in this. I always was posting the rerun from What's Happening TV show back in the day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
About the Lions stuff. But like you've persevered through this. And I think that's pretty cool to see how you, like the team, have dealt through the dog days of being a Lions supporter, part of Detroit Lions media, and are now reaping the benefits like us, the fans. It's pretty cool, man. I'm very, very, very happy seeing where you're at now from knowing
Oh,
your
thank you.
origin story, dude.
Here's the thing, Mike. The fans want content, all right? And we talk about podcasting. What do people want? What do they want to talk about? What's hot? I think we've been oversaturated and just blitzed with political stuff for the last couple of years, and I think people want to get away from that. And one thing that David, who's still running the network, the Lockdown Network, has basically ingrained in all the hosts' heads is try not to get political, try not to sway from the topic at hand. Yes, the Lockdown Chargers and Rams shows have had to deal with the Los Angeles situation and the
Mhm.
wildfires. But what people want to get away from out in LA, if they survived it, and hopefully they did, and their houses didn't burn down, which is just god awful, is all right, for that 26 to 32 minutes a day, can I get some Rams content? Can I hear what's going on with the Chargers? They're both playoff teams. And so it's hard for the Rams host or the Chargers host to get on there and not bring that up. But people want what they want. They're tuning to Lockdown Lions, Chargers, Rams, whatever, Pistons, Tigers, Wings. They want to hear about the teams. And they
Mhm.
want to know what's going on. Yes, I've swayed sometimes away from it, and I've gotten burned with it, and I've made that mistake. I got to get back to, all right, what's going on with the team today? I'll record this afternoon. They're playing the Commanders. We know it's a Saturday night game. We know Jaden Daniels is going to be tough to deal with. But I watched the game last night, the left tackle for the Commanders. I mean, he couldn't block your son. So they got to attack him. There's certain things that we can go over, and it brings people joy. People love this team. And, I get these phone calls on our voicemail system from people in the UK, Virginia, Ohio, Texas, and they're not in Detroit. So I'm kind of their conduit to what's happening around here. And it makes me feel good. So I know I got to focus daily, figure out what the topics are, get some good guests on, and bring it every day.
And your approach, I'm not sure exactly why it is or what it is, but it's different than the other podcasts that are out there. There's some really great ones out there that do a really good job. But like, you there with your microphone, which is, I'm going to ask you why you hold the mic, because that's an interesting question,
I was
right?
just talking about this with my wife last night, but keep going. Yeah.
Well, your approach and the guests that you have and the style, it's very, very accessible, right? You're not breaking down some of the X's and O's and things like that, which not every fan wants to go that deep, right? I think you just provide this nice surface level experience, and then you go deep dive down a little bit here and there, but for the most part, like, it's very accessible to the common everyday fan, which that's what the vast majority of fans are.
Yeah, I think this goes back to my sports radio background, and when we were at WDFN back in the day, the Stony Wojo days, and Jamie and Greg and all of that, we were entertaining. We were this little engine that could, on an AM signal, that came up because it was entertaining. Art Regner was doing Lions postgame shows and screaming off the top, from the top of his lungs, and saying the Fords were incompetent and going off on Wayne Fonts. And it was funny. Art was entertaining. Art didn't necessarily have to talk about, you're right, the 4-3 defense or A and B gaps to get listeners. I'll never forget when Bobby Ross got hired, and there's Bill Ford, and we were live, and Stoney was there, and Wojo and myself and a few others, and Bill Ford Jr. walks over, and I didn't know him at all. And he turns to Stoney and me and he goes, "What's Art saying?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, Mr. Ford's son listens to Art." And I said that to him. I go, "Wait, what?" And he goes, "Oh, when I'm in my car on the way home, I have Art on." And I'm like, "But Art is destroying your father personally at times, like calling him an old man, calling him incompetent. And this is Bill Ford. He's one of the most powerful guys in the city."
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Oh yeah, I can't get enough. I listen to Art every game." Even on the road, he was trying to listen to Art. And this is before streaming. So
Mm-hmm.
it was entertaining. So you've got to entertain, Mike. I think I appreciate your comments about what I do. I could do film breakdown. I mean, and the beat writers are so good. All right. And I know this is where you and I could argue, but the Lion beat writers compared to the other teams in town are all like Dave Burkett and Justin Rogers are so good. The Pride of Detroit guys do a great job. All of them, when Kyle was at M Live, now it's Ben. Tim Twentyman with DetroitLions.com. I love some of his breakdowns. I just think they do a good job. So you're going to get that content somewhere else. For me, I'm kind of like a mix of an experienced host, a guy that's been in the market now over 25 years, and a fan. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm just going to be me. And so that's kind of where I go back to the sports radio stuff. You got to be entertaining. I mean, we won at WDFN and did well. We won and did well when I was at the Ticket, when Tom was running it, Tom Bigby, rest in peace, because it was entertaining and it was guy talk. It was a lot of, don't break it down, go to the caller, see what they have to say.
Mm-hmm.
If there's something in current events that is maybe non-sports related, utilize it, go to it, because if it gets listeners, there were days where when I worked with Mike Valeni and Terry Foster, and their best shows were stuff that was non-sports. It was fun. It was entertaining, and it made for a good listen. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do.
Well, and the guests that you have are phenomenal, but that, I think, speaks to like your experience, your network, where you came from. What's your background outside of the podcasting?
Well, I grew up, in Cleveland, but I wanted to be Joe Tate. My goal, he was the radio voice of the Cavs when I was growing up, and he was, to me, the best broadcaster I've ever heard. And I've been around Ernie Harwell. I knew Ernie when he was here, and before he passed and everything else. But Joe was just my guy. So he was the voice of the Cavs. I wanted to do that. I went to Syracuse for radio and to follow in the footsteps of all these Syracuse guys that were on the air, whether it was Tirico or Ian or Dave Pash, Sean McDonough. These are all my mentors. I mean, Dave was a year ahead of me, kind of more of an older brother, but if something goes on with Chris Spielman, I'll text Sean. Sean McDonough is the best, and I'll text. I know he's close to Spielman. Hey, do you want to come on and talk? Tirico is not doing our game this week, but if we get Iron Eagle for a Westwood game, you got to have relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and you stay in touch with people, and you see if they got 10, 15 minutes to come on once in a while. We've had all those guys on the show. I don't want to. I got close with the guys at PFF, at Pro Football Focus. Dave, who was their media guy for a long time, is not there anymore, but I like putting them on the air. And I just think putting them on and letting them go. I don't want to let to them to lecture to them or just ask them the questions. And so it's been pretty good. The Lions have been good to me. I leave the team alone for the most part. We'll try to, if they make the title game again, it was tradition last year to get Craig Reynolds on. He's kind of the show mascot because they come on Craig. We love Craig
Yes.
Reynolds, but the team's been good to me for the most part. But I'm not down there covering them daily because I have a 9 to 5 job. So I can't get to Ellen Park a lot. So guys like John Macaroon, who does a podcast, Detroit Sports Podcast, and All Lions SI, he had Amik Robertson last week. I'm sure it's because he's down there. But when I need something from a team, for the most part, they've been pretty good.
And what's your degree in? Is it journalism?
Speech communication. Broadcast journalism was a major at the Newhouse School at Syracuse, but unfortunately, your guy here, high school grades were not good enough to get into Newhouse. So I got into speech communications in visual and performing arts, the VPA school. And I remember my mom went to high school with the dean of the Newhouse School at Syracuse. So we met with him like my second day at school. And he said, his name was Dean Rubin. And he said, all you got to do is get like a 3.2 or 3.3 and we'll get you in your first semester at Newhouse. And I'm like, great. But I had a lot of fun freshman year, way too much fun. My first semester, I think I got like a 2.1, but I was working at the radio station. I was trying out. So I didn't have to be in Newhouse to be at WAER. So I never got really into the school. I took a couple of Newhouse classes as a minor, but other than that, yeah, it was just speech communications and learning how to get in front of people and all of that. And it was, it worked out. But my biggest thing was I had a good time at school. My grades were all right, but I had that WAR experience. In my senior year, I was assistant sports director. We did all the football and basketball games, lacrosse. I got my experience that way.
Yeah, my first year at community college, I majored in where we were going to drink that night. So yeah, similar
I can
stories.
see that with you, Mike.
Yes. And I had a great experience at Oakland University because I just walked in the door of the TV studio there, and I ended up running a camera underneath the basket at the Oakland University men's basketball games, which is pretty fun. So yeah, taking those opportunities in media to get involved as soon as possible in college, I think that helped me more than my degree in English ever did.
It's funny. It's not always about, all right, I went to Specs Howard or I went to CMU, Ohio U, Northwestern, Syracuse, any of these really good communication schools. It is just about this whole KLT philosophy that I always talk about: know, like, and trust. People want to work with people that they know, like, and trust. Look at Rico Beard. I mean, Rico was a cameraman at Fox 2. He and I got to just know each other at certain sporting events and stuff. And one day he came to me and said, what if I want to be on the radio? And I'm like, well, what's your background? He's like, just camera stuff. And I think he did go to Specs, but he didn't really have the on air work. And he came to me when I was at WDFN and I told him, come to the building and pop into a studio one day when I'm here and record like a sports cast and just do reps. And it was a relationship thing. And now he's hosting Afternoon Drive with Mike on the ticket. So like it's about growing those relationships. And I tell people this all the time. And I know you've introduced me to some of your former students. Get with people like me and reach out. I'm not going to bite. You're not going to bite, Mike, and tell people no. Maybe, hey, send me your tape. Maybe I can help. I love critiquing and mentoring younger men and women that want to get into this business. I'll talk to anybody about podcasting. I talk to Professor Gerstner Joanne at Michigan State all the time, and her students who want to get into this because that's how it works. Every job I've gotten, yeah, I've got talent, but like I knew David Locke. If I didn't know David, I probably wouldn't have been on the network. So it is about who you know and who can help you out.
But being ready for the opportunity when it presents itself as well, because you've
Oh
put in
yeah,
the reps in the gym. Yeah,
for sure.
So regarding podcasting, over the past few years, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned? Like if you could start over again.
That's a good question. Like I said, I'm shortening things now. And look, Drew and Mark and those guys, the Drew Lane podcast, they're doing 2 hours a day or whatever it is. And God bless them. It's like a radio show and they do well. But I think most people want to hear 25 minutes to 30, to a drive to work or a drive home type of thing. I get people all the time say, oh, I got a podcast. We listen to it. I say, sure. And then they send it to me and it's an hour and 20 minutes. That's way too long. I think people's attention spans now, and this is what I like about Locked On, is they're telling us to do between 26 and 32 minutes a day, because that's kind of the drive to work or the drive home for people, and then they're on to something else. So I think that that's important, that you shorten your thoughts. I said before about with the podcasting, you want to be entertaining. You want to make sure you have pretty good equipment. You're not in somebody's, I mean, I'm in my basement, but you want to have the backdrop, you want to have the camera, the mic, you want to sound good, you want to look professional. Um, you work on that. It doesn't have to, now you have the access to it like you do. Mike, I'm assuming you're at home at the moment here, or?
I'm actually at the Toledo Tech Loft, downtown Toledo. I've got an office here and running my stuff. But like, if you look this direction, I've got my lunch over here, mess over here. Like, it looks decent back here, but up in front, man, it's just pure chaos. But just figured out how to make it happen and look relatively decent here.
Yeah, but you want that good mic, you want some lighting. Um, and you also do not want to script everything out. I've also listened to some podcasts where, I'll see someone, good afternoon and welcome to the blah, blah, blah show. My name is Matt Dery and I'm here with Mike Vanderpool. No, get on there and be you and be authentic, be genuine. Um, Make sure, yes, you're organized. And I know every day what my topics are going to be. And before I go on, I'm not just hitting record and going, but you want to be able to space it out and to hit on enough things, whether you're doing a daily show or a weekly show, that people want to hear. And also too, get people, you've got to utilize your social media platforms to let people know you're there. LinkedIn's been great for me for some of the podcast work I do, for my 9 to 5 job at Financial Architects or a Q5 experience. One is a financial firm. The other is a succession planning company, where you've got to put your stuff out on LinkedIn numerous times a day. It's got to be video. There's got to be some sort of visual that people are getting now. People are so into video, and I know this whole TikTok thing could be coming to an end, which I think is too bad because my wife's addicted to it and she loves it. But like, um, you got to maybe do short form for your show previews. Hey, I'm Mike Vanderpool. I'm going to have Matt Dery on the show. Check it out, and do that before you put it out.
Yeah.
If you just are telling people, listen to my podcast, do a quick video on your phone and throw it out on LinkedIn and say, here's the link to when it's going to be ready, and tease it. There's so much that goes into it. It's not just about doing the show. It's about promoting it. It's about telling your friends, your family, hey, check this out. Pass this along to maybe 3 or 4 people that you think would take a listen and download it. Or else no one's going to know it's out there.
I think that the making of the content is truly the easiest part right now, but distributing it, right? Like taking this, the first 2 podcasts I did for this, which everything's going to be going live in February because I want to launch with like a catalog of like 7 to 10 episodes. They were 3 hours long. And I'll probably leave the audio version on Spotify roughly 2.5 hours long because it's really good conversation. But I'm going to chunk it up into video and other snippets and distribute it LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever else, because people will listen. I mean, obviously not everybody's Joe Rogan, but Joe Rogan has proven that people will spend 3 hours listening to an interesting conversation.
Yeah,
But on the video production side, yeah, if you're doing a podcast, I think somehow, some way, you almost have to find a way to start weaving in video, even if you're not necessarily going to use it immediately. But just start recording yourself to start getting comfortable recording yourself, right? You
exactly.
put the reps in the gym. Nobody watches practice, right? But you do those reps in the gym so you're ready when you do want to perform prime time.
It's crazy. I was being an old radio guy in my 50s now. I can say I'm old. We both have gray hair, Mike, but um, I didn't want to go on YouTube. And Locked On came to me a couple years ago and said, "You're the last NFL show on here. Get your ass on YouTube." And I'm like, "All right." And so I did, and it grew the audience immensely. I was
Yeah.
stunned at how many people will go on their, Roku or YouTube TV or smart TV or whatever and watch me sit here like you and I are talking and watch me talk for 25 minutes. But that's how they consumed content, yeah, on
Mhm.
YouTube. After the Lions beat the Packers, they played Thursday, so I did a Thursday night show. The Friday show, I basically got on and I ripped on Peter Bukowski, the host Locked On Packers, who's I like to dub the most hated man in Detroit sports. And Pete and a lot of the Packer fans were bitching about the referees. And I did my first half of the show was, oh my gosh, Packer fans are whining. And I put it in my title. I said, whiny Packer fans trying to take away from the Detroit Lions win. I had 27,000 views. That's the
Yeah.
most viewed show I ever had. And I'm like, that show? Like, but people loved that we had beaten Green Bay, the Lions had beaten Green Bay, and here are the Packers whining because it used to be the Lion fans
Yeah.
that would complain about the refs. It was in Green Bay when we got hosed on the who was the defensive end that got called for the two legal hand? Trey Flowers, legal hands to the face. Mike, that was the biggest screw job in Lions history outside of the Dallas and Pete Morelli game. So like that's what we used to do, and people loved it. And the 300, 400 comments on YouTube, and it's like, whoa! It really hit me that the YouTube community is out there and they want fun content. They want controversial. While you may be more comfortable, and I was more comfortable at the beginning, just doing a radio show on tape. Eventually, the YouTube audience was important, and uh, even if you're just doing a show, and I use um, we have Simplecast now, so we upload the audio into Simplecast, and they farm that out to Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Odyssey, and all of that. And people can sign up for anything. You can use Libsyn,
Hmm.
Libsyn. You can use Simplecast, Megaphone, and you pay a little bit for it. Lockdown obviously handles it for me, um, but yes, the video part, it would be always good to have some sort of video proponent of it or component of it until you get the entire show onto YouTube or wherever.
My first time interviewing someone on camera at Oakland University was ridiculously awful. I should show you.
Who was it?
So I produced a show called Veterans History Project. So I was interviewing like a veteran. I sat with them for like an hour, did a pre-interview, sit down. It's a nice studio environment. I've got my suit on, babyface Vanderpool hanging out there. And during the interview, like I'm trying to think of my questions. I'm looking up at the ceiling and just it's so bad. These I'll share it with you. And you
I'd
can watch
love to
about
see it.
30 seconds of it, and then you'd be like, "Oh my goodness, why did I can see why this guy?" But I look like an idiot. But part of this is I think looking like an idiot sometimes and coming out okay, right? Um,
I mean, it's funny, in the interviewing thing, and you remember this when we had Golden Tate on regularly each week at 105.1, and there was the day where he got on there and said, "Oh yeah, by the way, the other team knows our plays." If I hadn't listened, and that's another thing I give people advice about with doing podcasts, especially with interviews. If you're not listening to your interviewee, you might miss something. You may
mhm,
have 5 questions, 6 questions scripted out, and I notes usually for Golden every week. But when he came out and said, "Oh, by the way, the other team is shouting our plays out before the game, before the play goes on, and Stafford is barking out the signals," and I go, "Wait, what?" Like if I hadn't been listening and I just went to the
mhm.
next question, I would have blown the interview. I go, "Wait, what'd you say?" I go, "They know your plays?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's bad." And I was like, "Oh," and then that turned into a national story. You got to be able to listen. You were probably nervous interviewing that veteran for the first time and had your list of questions. But if you're on question two and that on question two, they say something crazy, you got to be able to follow up and go, "Wait a minute, did you just say this?" Or tell me more about that. Um, that's just a little, trick of the trade, I guess.
When I teach interviewing now, because I do that in my media classes, it's
Yeah.
it's your first 5 to 10 the 5 or 10 questions that you've written down. Those aren't the questions that you want to have answered. It's the questions that come from the replies to those questions. When you start digging deeper beyond just that surface level stuff that's easy to find, that's where you're going to get the gold.
I agree. And I mean, if you're interviewing, a college student and they're talking about their experience or whatever, and they bring up the fact that they, I don't know, skipped a class to do something, you've got to be able to be like, "Wait, why'd you do that?" Or "Wait, tell me more about that.
Hmm.
How did that come about?" And then they'll get more in depth. Like you said, you've got questions planned. Of course you do, but you got to be able to listen and find a few things. I would say every interview I do, there are 1 to 2 things that I'm listening for that I've got to follow up about. Ross Tucker is a great example. Ross, of course, has his own football podcast. He's with CBS. Did 2 games this weekend at Westwood, one, and he came on and was promoting his thing about myfrontpagestory.com, and it's this cool website that creates an article and a front page story for your wife or your special someone, and it's in a frame and all of that. And he was talking about it the other day, and I followed up with, "Did you do something? You're like the king of romance now, Ross. You've got to have fun with people."
Yeah.
And he enjoyed that. Not everything is just so formal. And
It-
I know it's, you kind of go into specs, your school or wherever you're learning about how things are supposed to be, but a lot of times, sometimes it is just about personality and bringing out the best in people just by having a conversation.
it's that human connection. It's that
Totally.
human connection, right? When we're having conversations, one of the best things, and I'm a little bit of promotion for Heart of the Lions fan here. One of the
Yeah.
best things I've heard when people watch that movie, uh, recent story. Somebody showed it to their significant other, as a hardcore Lions fan, and said that as he watched it, and there's you and I and a few people, Freddie the Pizza Man, Kevin Lawson, sitting at the table in the pizzeria talking about the
Yeah.
game, that the person watching it was actually yelling at us about the stuff we were talking about. I'm like, that's the experience, right? Like we sat there and we had that conversation, and that's, I think, what we're and what you're emulating in this podcast medium, especially when you're communicating with somebody else, is you have people who are feeling like they're part of the conversation and either nodding along or thinking along. And I think that's just a testament to, how you approach the game here, which is awesome.
No, I appreciate that, and you did such a great job with the movie. The thing that I liked about Heart of Lions fan is you had Blaha, you had Frank Beckman, Courtney, these guys at the WJR studios, Ken Brown, but like Kevin, the other Lions fan, was in his car. Like he was driving to the game, or sometimes you got to do that. I've had guests tell me, "Hey, listen, I'm going to be in my car and my phone. Is that okay?" Yeah, that's all right, because I think it's a human thing. Like, hey, we got Mike Tirico, and he has to be in his car, or whomever we've had on the show. It's okay. The other day, Dave Burkett was on from the Free Press, and Dave just published a Lions book, which I have here, Detroit Lions, an illustrated timeline. And he was like, "Oh, his connection was messed up on his iPad." I said, "Throw it on your phone. I don't
Mm.
care." Sometimes not being formal is more. It's more conversational. It's okay. Than oh, you've got to come to a studio, or no. Sometimes you just you go with it, and as long as you can hear them and see them, and the audio is clear enough, you make do with what you have.
And keep it real. I think, like, at the end of the day, all of this that you've just kind of talked about here, it's like, just keep it authentic and keep it real, because that's what people are looking for in this day and age of too much. And half of it might be AI, if not more, right?
Here's the other thing. You were asking me about my microphone.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yes.
people see that I hold this microphone. I hold it as I'm broadcasting. My wife, literally last night, we were scrolling through some stuff, and I go, "Oh, let me just see how many views we had last week on YouTube." And I threw the show on, and she started laughing. She's like, "You're still holding the mic?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, there's like the stand that you have, Mike.
Yeah.
Most of the hosts have the stands that, just stay here.
Yeah.
I don't, they drive me crazy. I
Yeah.
would have my hand on it. When I was doing the piston stuff for years and I had the headset on, I kept adjusting the mic. I'd have my hand on the mic. And Albert Dale, who is in Heart
Mhm.
of Lions fan, is my best friend here in Detroit, is a radio engineer, would always say to me, "You're killing me. You're going to break my headsets. Stop touching." So I'm like, this is where I'm most comfortable. I can still talk with my left hand and have the mic in my right hand. And this is how I prefer to do it. And you're right. People have said to me, like, "Why don't you get a mic stand? Or do you not have a mic stand? Or did your mic stand break?" And I said, "No, until I find one that I like," because I've gone to stores, I've looked on Amazon, those, they just drive me crazy. I don't know why. This makes me more comfortable. That's just me.
And if that's what you're gonna do, it's that microphone and how you're holding it isn't affecting your views at all, right? If it's making you more
No.
comfortable, go with it. And heck, it just gave us a minute longer of the podcast. You're a good bit on the
See, this
podcast,
was
right?
content. This was content,
Yes.
Michael, but I don't know.
There
That's just me. That's just kind of what I do, man. It's been a lot of fun, and big week ahead with another playoff game. It's become
w
commonplace here to be hosting playoff games. Isn't this wild?
well, I wanna talk about the Lions as we close out the pod, but I do have one more question.
Hmm.
You've been podcasting with Locked On Lions since 2016.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you really wanna go into this, but how much money have you been able to make along the way? Not specifics, but just to give people
Right.
like some realistic expectation, right? Like, I started streaming and I'm making like 30 cents a day. But is that normal? Is that realistic? Is that the stuff that you have to go through? Like, again, I don't need the ones and zeros of the dollars and cents, but just some idea
Yeah.
of like what this has
I,
become for you.
I'm lucky. I'm very lucky. The network has done so well that I haven't had to. When I first started, I had local sponsors,
Okay.
which was good, no question about it. And what was nice was you send an email with the local sponsor that's interested, and I still have people that reach out, and I connect them with the national sales manager at the Locked On Podcast Network, and we can see if it works. I stay out of those conversations because
Yeah.
some of these local sponsors are friends, and I don't want to know what they're spending. I do know what I would get as a piece of the action, but the national sponsors that have hit us because we've done so well and because people want Raiders, Chiefs, Lions, Content Daily, Pistons, Red Wings, Tigers, whatever, Michigan State, we've done well. So national sponsors, big ones like a FanDuel, Prize Picks, BetterHelp, um, have all come on board. And so the money's been compared to when I started, it's crazy good. Like it's like really been good. So I've been lucky to latch on from the ground up.
Hmm.
I'm one of the original, like say OGs. I think there's like 10 of us left from 2016 have been there from the beginning. And so not even having to handle the sales part is completely lucky. And I'm fortunate because most of the podcasters go, all right, if I start, how am I going to find somebody? Look at what Kylie Kelsey is doing right now, Jason Kelsey's wife. She probably woke up one day and said, I want to be on the air and do my own show. And she's got a great personality. Her husband is just killing it. And her obviously brother in law,
Hmm.
Travis, they're killing it on the podcast scene. Kylie says, I want to do it. And there's a bidding war of people that want
Yeah.
to have her on. And now she's a top 5 show. And I'm sure she's making a gazillion dollars. With Locked On, it took some time, but to have these national sponsors that know the kind of audience that we've grown, um, I'm it's complete luck. But for people that are starting, talk to people that you know and do these the key to the lockdown shows is the live spots. I'm on there daily saying, hey, got to get on FanDuel tonight, the Pistons are playing, you want to put some money down on the Pistons? And people go, oh yeah, I do. Oh, I'll go to FanDuel and we have a promo code and all these things. I have tons of people asking me, they're coming up, hey, that whole therapy thing, BetterHelp, what's the code again?
Hmm.
Locked On NFL. What's the code for Game Time, the ticket app? Yeah, it's Locked On, whatever. So it works. And it's me on there trying to be genuine. I'm saying I got tickets for the SZA concert when I took my daughter 2 years ago on Game Time. I did. And I have the app right here on my phone. So that's a cool thing that I would suggest to people is do some of these sponsors will say, I'll sponsor your podcast, but can I be on? Or is it a
Yep.
recorded spot? You could say, yeah, I'll throw you on, but make it live and make it genuine so that people remember it. It hits home better. When Mike Valeni was doing commercials and live reads on the ticket when I worked for him for Foundation Systems of Michigan, I remember when I had a basement leak, I knew who to call because it was imprinted in my brain the way Mike talked about it. It helps the sponsor for sure.
Awesome. 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 Awesome.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's you were very, I mean, obviously tremendously skilled, networked, opportunity knocks, right place, right time. But yeah, the
totally.
amount of, for folks starting out, don't have unrealistic expectations about what you're going to be able to do financially, which is, I think, why a lot of folks need to do something that they are passionate about and not
Yeah.
worry about the money out front. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I would say a majority of the podcasts are for fun anyway. And yes, people are making great money. You mentioned Rogan before, or the guys from Barstool,
Yeah.
Pardon My Take, PFT, and Big Cat. I mean, that's they're not really on the radio. Pat McAfee isn't really on the radio anymore. It's a YouTube show and it's a podcast. Uh, Ryan
We
Russillo, same thing, was on ESPN Radio for years. His show, he's earning a living based off of that. Podcasting is the way to go. I mean, my wife and I were talking the other day about Sirius XM. I listen to a lot of music there, but she's a podcaster. So when she's in the car, she's like, should I just cancel my Sirius? Because she's listening to different podcasts
Mhm.
all the time, whether it's true crime that she's into or whatever else is going on. So it's become a big time medium, but it does, it's not exactly a giant moneymaker for people that are just starting off, but it is a way for them to get out their opinions on topics that they're into, and people are listening, and it's easy to get on Apple and Spotify and Amazon and Odyssey and all these platforms. So go for it and give it a shot.
So let's switch to the Lions because I love Lions. This
Yes.
is just a freaking amazing season, and I am oh man, D's. I don't even know, dude. Like pinching myself. The other day, Kevin Lawson and I we shared season tickets. I went to the Vikings game. My wife and I hung out, and the day after, I'm just dude, we were 15 and freaking two. You know what I'm saying? Like it's the
Yeah. Oh,
reality
yeah.
of what this is. Just like, and he's like, bro, I've said it 100 times, and I'm like, it just never, as a Lions fan, thought that we would get to now, and where we're at now is insane. It's literally insane to think that we have a legitimate chance at the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, not even legitimate. I mean, they're the favorites. I mean, you're at home. I mean, there's no. I think if you watch Philadelphia yesterday,
Yeah,
they look good. Don't get me wrong. The defense is solid. Obviously, losing to Kobe Dean is going to be big for them as he got injured in that Green Bay game. But it's not like the Eagles ran away and blew out the Packers. And the Packers were horrible.
yeah,
That was a terrible performance. And yet Philly was in a one-score game in the fourth quarter.
yeah,
Obviously, as we're recording today, it's either going to be Rams or Vikings against Philly. But it's not like we're looking up going, last year was a tough road to hoe to have to go to San Francisco and deal with all of that.
yeah.
And obviously, for the first 30 minutes, it was great. This time around, Lions are at home, control their own destiny, and it only takes 2 home wins to go to something that the Lions have never been, and that's the Super Bowl. And I can't even imagine what somebody like yourself, you mentioned Kevin Lawson, um, who was the guy that was on Heart of the Lions fan that was crying, um, the
Oh,
Lions fan.
Burkhart,
Yeah. I
Rick
mean,
Burkhart. Yeah,
Rick Burkhart, Brad, all those people, that I got to know through you and the movie, but like, what are they going to do? Like Super Bowl and then 2 weeks of just like you said, waking up and going, wait a minute, the Lions are playing in the Super Bowl? Like that's unheard of. I mean, 15-2, you're right. I'm getting tweets or Blue Sky or Facebook or whatever, and I've spent less time on social media lately because it's a
yeah.
cesspool. But my
Same.
gosh, 15-2. Like I've had people like, well, what are they gonna do about Kindle Vildor, or what if Carlton Davis is injured, or we have no pass rush? And I'm like, well, hold on a second. 15 wins?
Yeah, dude.
That, like, remember when they lost 15? Like, that, and it's amazing. And they're here. They are playing their first playoff game of this year. They're an 8.5-point favorite. Remember when the Lions got in the playoffs? It's like, all right, we made it. Oh, they're 8-point favorite, 8-point underdogs at Dallas, or 9-point underdogs at Tampa, or Kevin to go to New Orleans under Jim Schwartz. We knew they were never winning that game. The
Yeah.
Seattle game under Caldwell, there wasn't a chance. None that they were going to go to Seattle and win. Yeah, right. And they lost. So like this time around I just hope people enjoy the ride. This is incredible how good they are and how good they've been now for about 2.5 years. People are getting used to it. It's kind of cool.
That's my biggest thing. I don't want to get used to it too fast. I still want to enjoy the moment and not be, as an angry Lions fan, I don't want something to happen. If they were to lose, I don't want to be like, I don't want to be as pissed off as I used to be back in the day because of like, it's a hard freaking thing to win the Super Bowl. I mean,
Yeah.
legitimately, it is not an easy thing to do. That said, watching the games yesterday, Jaden Daniels, I think, is phenomenal. I don't think he's experienced what Ford Field is. When's the last?
No.
You went to a game this year, right?
Yeah.
Dude, it
Yeah.
is the Vikings game. It's insane, bro, how loud it is. It's insane what this crowd is able to do. And that
Yeah.
guy, he doesn't have that experience. He's gonna have. We might see the Sam Darnold experience from '85.
Are you going Saturday? By the way, Saturday night. Are you going?
Actually, no, I'm selling my ticket. Oh, hey, downtown Toledo, how you doing? Can you hear the sirens?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Uh, um, I'm selling my ticket. We got a boys' weekend, so I will be. It'll be pretty cool. I'll be watching it with some of my better friends from high school over with a nice view of the lake over on the west side of the state. But then I'm going the week after. I will be
Okay.
there, and the playoff environment last year versus the Rams and Tampa Bay was insane, like just insane. And I think this year is going to be bigger and louder because we can taste it more. I think we kind of had an idea, okay, this would be cool last year, but now I think we expect it. I think it's just going to be savage, dude. These Lions fans, they're starting to understand how to be fans. No offense, Lions fans. Had a lot of sitting on their hands third quarter back in the day, but right now.
Oh God, here you go again. This is your biggest beef. Here's the thing. I will disagree with you about this week. I do think it'll be loud. Don't get me wrong. It will be loud. That Rams game, I couldn't believe it. I mean, that was and there was an article in the Free Press, I think, this week about the guys that started the Jared Goff chant an hour and a half before the game, that started the whole Jared Goff chanting thing. I mean, I love now there's some Red Wing slappies that are going, can we stop with the Jared Goff chants at the Wings games? And it's like, no, we're not. Like, it's not about the Lions. It's about the whole city has rallied around this guy that the Rams just carted to us, and was like, get out. And he's like, oh my God, California guy, I'm going to come to Detroit. And he's succeeded. So that it's not just a Wings, Pistons, Lions. I was at the Tigers Guardians game 3, and my brother came in from Cleveland, and I told him a third inning, I go, get ready for the Goff chants. And he's like, why?
Mm-hmm.
And I go, just get ready. They'll go, they'll be here. And about 6th inning or so, Jared Goff chants started. But I don't necessarily I think it'll be loud. Don't get me wrong. It'll be loud Saturday. But I think nothing will top that Rams game just because of the first time around hosting a playoff game since '93 and Stafford.
Yeah.
Now, NFC Championship game. And what if it's Rams? And it could be. That would be berserk. I'm not going to go Saturday either, but I will be there next Sunday at 3 if they make it. And you have to be. I mean, that'll be be in that building if they go to the Super Bowl. I mean, there will not be a dry eye in the house. Everybody will be crying. Everybody.
Yeah.
And no one's going to go home.
I'm tearing up right now, Dery, just thinking about it.
Yeah, I know. Tell people to leave that stadium. Tell people no one will leave. You will be there until they kick you out, because it's just going to be a giant party and people just sitting there going, what did I just witness? And it'll say on the scoreboard, NFC champions, and we're going to the Super Bowl, whatever they say. Could you imagine? I mean, oh my God. Awesome.
I'm not leaving till they ask me to leave. Seriously, bro.
You're going to be numb.
Yeah, 100%.
Kevin Lawson, that guy will cry. Oh my God. He was crying in your movie. So I can't even imagine what Kevin will do.
I mean, I'm bringing tissues, bro. I'll bring tissues.
Got to. It would be pretty cool. Well, and they got a great chance. They're playing well, and they're getting some guys back. And like I said, they're going to be at home. It almost feels like a destiny situation, because there were plenty of games this year, Houston and a few others, where you went, just not our day, and they found a way to win. And that's what they do.
I think it's interesting, as watching them over the past couple of years, we've excised, whatever the word is, all of the demons, all of those places where we would have stumbled and fallen in the past. We've risen above them. This idea that we're going to have the Commanders come and play, the team that kind of smacked us, however many years ago, to come in, and I think there might be a little bit of revenge in there, right, for Sheila and the ownership, because like that was a part of our history, right? Our last real chance at success, Super Bowl.
The 91 team, after they beat Dallas at the Silverdome, you're right, having to go to Washington and getting destroyed 41-10. It is kind of ironic. It's Washington. Also, there's so much irony. I mean, the Commanders are trying to build themselves like the Lions. They went out and poached Lance Newmark as assistant GM. He was with the Lions. Anthony Lynn is the running backs coach for the Commanders. The man that was offensive coordinator for 1 year, and Dan Campbell demoted and then fired. David Blau, who's kind of a folk hero around here from the Hard Knock show, is the assistant quarterbacks coach. Zane Gonzalez, a member of the famous kicker list. I mean, so the list goes on and on. There are connections. Ben Johnson's going to see Tom Brady this weekend, because Brady's doing the game for Fox. Brady's after Ben Johnson to go to the Raiders. There's a ton of weird stories going into Saturday night.
It's awesome. Great time to be covering this team. So,
Totally.
Dery, it's been 50 minutes, man. I know you and I could probably talk forever, but
I know
there's bills to pay, other things to do here. So at the end of the day, appreciate you, everything that you're doing with the Locked On Lions podcast. Appreciate you sharing all of the everything regarding what it takes to run a successful podcast, giving tips and everything else like that for folks who are out there checking it out. So I do have to, again, thank you, because you were the person who sparked Heart of a Lions fan. No, I shouldn't say that.
I was one of them. I was just trying to help you.
But no, listen, this is the true story, right? You didn't spark it. You blew on the sparks. You blew on the flame, the initial flame. Because I made that video, 3 minutes, whatever it was, of my son and my voiceover and whatever and pictures.
Yeah.
I showed it to you, and you said that you have to do something with this. And that right there, bro, that was the thing that flamed that movie. So I will always have a debt of gratitude to you, and I appreciate you sharing your time then and now.
All right, buddy. Great to see you, Mike, and all the best, my friend. Be safe this weekend with your buddies. Don't get too crazy, because we need a healthy Mike Vanderpool back and upright and ready for what hopefully is the NFC Championship game next Sunday. So great to see you, bud.
You too. Take care, Matt.